What's up, y'all? This is Will with Schedulefly, and this is the Restaurant Owners Uncorked podcast. Brought to you by us here at Schedulefly. Simple restaurant employee scheduling software, legendary customer service. Look, if you're on pencil and paper or Excel, we'll make life easier for you. I promise you. Give us a 30-day free trial, schedulefly.com. You can sign up online. Super simple. We'll take great care of you, and you'll be glad you did it. If you're on one of these very comprehensive, lots of bells and whistles, restaurant employee scheduling software, some of the 800-pound gorillas in our space, and you're paying a lot of money for stuff you don't need and don't use, maybe don't have great customer service, we'd love to serve you too. We'll keep things simple. We'll take great care of you and your team. Also brought to you by our wonderful sponsors, Pop Menu, Giving Kitchen, and Kickfin. And you'll hear from each of those or about each of those momentarily. We were back at the Indigo Road and had an opportunity to sit down with Kimball, Brienza, managing partner. He has an incredible story and journey to where he is today. When you talk to Kimball, you're talking to somebody who is able to understand and articulate what hospitality is as well as anybody you'll come across. He gets it. It's in his DNA. And through his growth at several places, and then for the last number of years at Indigo Road, with Steve Palmer and the team there, his curious and insightful and thoughtful growth mindset has clearly blossomed. And this is what hospitality is. I mean, this conversation about hospitality and what it means to him and what they try to do at Indigo Road. This is as good of a conversation as you'll have about what hospitality really is as you'll ever hear, in my opinion. So you're going to enjoy this episode. Before we get to Kimball, let's hear a quick word from our lead sponsor and our partner at Schedulefly, Pop Menu. Pop Menu is, well, they're a partner of Schedulefly, and we have a lot of happy mutual customers. But Pop Menu is all about making your day easier and your sales bigger. They will simplify your marketing operations, bring in more guests, capture customer data for personalized remarketing to keep them coming back. With one super simple to use platform that integrates with most point of sales like Toast and Square and a number of others, Pop Menu starts with a beautifully designed, easy to update interactive menu that transforms the guest experience online. It includes a brand new website that's optimized for search engines like Google for no additional cost, automated digital marketing, online ordering and waitlisting, and you'll never miss another call with their AI answering solution that costs as little as 47 cents an hour. Check it out. Check out the link in our show notes. There's so much more in Pop Menu. Here's my 2 cents. I've talked to a lot of our mutual customers, and here's what they say about Pop Menu. Great company, great customer service, great product, great results. This episode is also brought to you by Giving Kitchen. Giving Kitchen is a national nonprofit that helps food service workers in crisis. And since they started in 2013, they've helped over 13,000 food service workers and awarded over $9 million to them. If you or someone you know works at a restaurant, a food truck, catering company, concessions, bar, tap room, and you need financial assistance or stability network resources due to illness, injury, death of an immediate family member, housing disaster like a flood or a fire, please ask for help at thegivingkitchen.org/help. thegivingkitchen.org/help. Link in the episode summary. Please check out The Giving Kitchen. Amazing organization. Thank you all for listening. Here is our episode. We are live. We are in Greenville, South Carolina, and super thrilled. This is the second opportunity with one of the amazing people at Indigo Road, recorded here in Greenville just in the last few weeks. Kimball, introduce yourself.
Hey, my name is Kimball Brienza. I'm the managing partner for the Oku Sushi Concepts and part of the Indigo Road senior leadership team.
And so you're saying, so the one we're at here, and you've got Indigo and Oku right next to each other, that's the 8th Oku.
This is the 8th location of Oku, correct.
And you've got 2 more coming.
We got 2 more slated for the Florida region, which is exciting. One in Alice Beach, which is on the Panhandle between Destin and Panama City. Yeah. Beautiful.
I just heard that place is amazing.
The water's clear. I mean, it's beautiful down there. And then we're going to be doing Tampa. So Tampa's going to be a big project, rooftop restaurant and bar, and then the main level will be the main Oku restaurant. So pretty exciting about that market. You know, Florida's really been very a successful market for us so far. We did Oku Jacksonville Beach just last year, which is, you know, just come out of the gate really strong, and you know we're spoiled there because it's an oceanfront location. Right. So it's a pretty magical place.
That's awesome. All right, I got so many things I want to ask you about, but the first thing I always ask people is, when and why did you get started in hospitality?
Man, that's, you know, it's funny. I actually think back on that, and you know, at first it was a job. You know, for me as a dishwasher, my career, I'm a operations partner, but you know, my career was started in culinary. You know, I did go to 2 years of culinary school, and I did a lot of years of cooking when I was a bit younger. When I got, I think it was close to graduating high school, I was working a full-time culinary job at a restaurant, local restaurant in my hometown. And I remember one night the kitchen door kept swinging open, and as it got later, the bartenders, the servers, the manager, I could hear the excitement at the bar. I could hear the noise. Yeah. You know, I would hear the glassware clinking, and the music was up and the lights were dim. And I was like, man, that's where I want to be. Yeah. I always loved the business. I have a passion for food. But for me, it was like, that's the excitement. That's where the people are. I love human interaction. You know, so to me, that at that moment, I said, hey, that's where I'd like to now take this journey as a young guy, you know, starting at 13 as a dishwasher, learning his way up through prep cook, line cook, and I was like, I want to go in that direction. But I think it probably started early on. My family, we used to go out to dinner quite a bit. And where
are you from?
I'm from upstate New York, small town called Cooperstown. But we would
Baseball Hall
of Fame. We'd go out to dinner, and we various places. You know, holidays, Easter brunch was always at a fancy hotel. The normal Friday night family dinner was at, you know, local diner, you know, local Italian spot, you know. So I noticed all these different types of restaurants, and I was always looking at the type of people in the restaurants, guests, as well as the employees, and there was a charm about it, and there was a comfort about it for me. Dining, it was a great experience. I remember one time at an Easter brunch, my older sister, 5 years older, we went to a kind of fancy place. I was pretty young, and I remember all the servers were wearing, you know, tuxedos, and it was white tablecloth. I was out of my element as a little kid, and I remember I was chugging my Shirley Temple and my water, because as soon as it was done, this gentleman from the corner would come over and give me a new one. And my sister hit me in the arm and said, "Stop it." And I said, "But he keeps coming over and giving me more, and I don't have to ask." And I think it was somewhere in there I realized what it felt like to be taken care of. Yeah. And so I think from there it just kind of grew. And, you know, like I said, for me, interacting with all types of different people, different walks of life, that's the beautiful thing about restaurants is, you know, it's our table is everyone's welcome at our table as a guest. And then, you know, we have, you know, such a diverse group that people that work in restaurants. So for me, the different types of interaction with different people, to me, it's fascinating and really fulfilling.
Yeah, so you really had it. You had it in your DNA.
It was, it's from day one, I think.
Okay, so where were you in culinary school?
I went to a small vocational culinary school in upstate New York. Okay. It's called OAOC. And so it was a 2-year program. And I got, you know, I learned the most from these Culinary Institute of America chefs that I worked for in high school. Yeah. They taught me a lot about sauces, mother stocks, sauteing, heat, you know, all those things, seasoning food properly, cleaning cleaning shellfish, all those things. Culinary school really gave me more of a standard of time and temperature control.
Okay.
Standards, holding, things that honestly I think are important, but on the job training I think is where, you learn the most. I don't know how X-rated or R-rated this podcast is, but
go ahead, man.
I think anybody, just like culinary school or college, you learn a lot of fun but bad habits too. So that was always fun for me. But I think on the job training, for the most part, is what really stoked the fire for me for the hospitality industry.
Okay. How did you find your way to Charleston?
Well, I was working at a historic hotel in Cooperstown where all the Hall of Famers stay during the induction weekend, and I was working at a couple different places, the Country Club and some nice restaurants. And I had two friends. When I graduated high school, two buddies of mine, we moved out. We saved $1,000 apiece, and we drove to Colorado from New York State.
Nice.
And we found the cheapest apartment we could, and we were snowboard bums for about a year.
Did you grow up snowboarding?
I grew up, upstate New York. I grew up doing winter sports. So we were big into that, and we were like, let's go to Colorado. Let's do this. So we went out there. A couple of my buddies stayed. I ended up coming back for the summer when all of our college friends that just went off to their first freshman year in college came back to Cooperstown and got my old jobs back. They were eager to see me back, and which felt good because it gave me this assurance that I was good at this industry, and people were happy to see me come back to the restaurant to work. When that summer ended, everyone was going back to their second year of college. College at that point was not going to be for me. So I moved to Charleston with two friends that were transferring to College of Charleston, and I just went down there on a whim, saved some money in my pocket like I had with the Colorado trip, and I just said, I knew I was confident enough in myself that I could get a job and I could be on my own at 19. Because again, a lot of my friends at the same time at their age were in college on a meal program. They had the dorm, they had whatever. I was going on my own. So so there was something in me that said, hey, you've got to survive, and here's how I know how to survive. And I knew how to make money in the restaurants. And I was confident enough at that point to get a job and to pay my way. Now again, snot-nosed little punk kid at 19 just trying to drink beer and party with everybody while working in the restaurants. Of course, I had some missteps and had to have my folks bail me out of a couple sticky situations, but that's where my foundation of hospitality really grew. I had worked for some chain restaurants, and but once I finally got into fine dining down there, and saw another level of hospitality, not only for a price point serving expensive bottles of wine versus the burger joint or the pizza place, I just kind of I fell into this rhythm and this path, and the growth just kind of went from there. There were people, I think I was lucky enough to fall into some really good places that people and leaders saw potential in me. So I was, it's funny, for a long time I just was living, and there were people luckily that identified something in me and said they were going to challenge me to do something different and do more and grow in the business. And it started as me getting a shot as a waiter at a really high-end place where I'd only worked at Chili's, Outback, places like that. They said, there's a learning curve here because, the service is a lot more intricate, and you've got to learn about wine, which I had no idea what I was doing at the time. So I took it on myself and took, some initiative to learn, and I grew. And then at that point...
Where was that?
It was a restaurant no longer existing, but it was a staple in the culinary scene in Charleston at the time. It was called Carolina's.
Okay.
It was on Exchange Street, right near Oak Steakhouse, down by Brasserie LeBlanc. We've got some properties in that area, but from there, I became a server, was promoted to a bar manager, had no idea what I was doing, learned all that, learned mixology and spirit, became a spiritist and managing inventories, and then from there, I learned how to be an assistant manager. I was pushed into that. I didn't really want to be honest with you, but I knew there was a path I needed to continue on. My parents came from healthcare. So they were always skeptical about my choice of hospitality. At that time in the early 2000s, it was not as humane of an industry, and it was not seen as maybe serious professional career. They'd be sending me books like The Best career you can have for a 2-year associate's degree for dummies or whatever, and so, and I didn't, it just never felt right. I tried to even go back to community college and say, let me at least get a 2-year associate's degree. I went for 2 days and I just never went back. It just wasn't for me.
Yeah.
And so, it was kind of the growth. And then eventually I ended up kind of like I was telling you earlier, getting an opportunity I actually took a demotion and I left the Carolinas as a server as a manager to be a server at Oak.
Okay.
And that was more of I think a financial move, high-end steakhouses. And I knew at the time that they were a kind of a hot restaurant, and I knew I could make great money as a server. So I kind of went in that direction.
What year was this?
That must have been around 07. It was right before 08.
Right before 08.
Right before 08. Luckily, Charleston's a little bit of a bubble. So, there's a lot of people who are very stable that live and support those restaurants. So, we didn't feel it as much as some of the other cities.
Yeah.
But it's there when I met Steve, and he saw me as probably kind of a wild child, which I definitely was at the time.
Right.
But I think he saw some potential in me and had some trust in me, enough trust that he knew when Oku was getting ready to open up, we needed a general manager. And at that point I was kind of doing some management stuff at Oak, where he came in just as a consultant before he made that the flagship to start his whole path of the Indigo Road. And I said to him, Steve, man, I looked at him, I said, you're not going to put the Asian guy in play at the sushi restaurant? And he kind of laughed, and then I saw him think, and then ever since then, he gave me a shot, and I definitely had some hiccups as a first-time GM. But I always remembered in my whole career looking at my leadership above me and saying, okay, here's what I liked about this guy or this woman who was my leader.
Yeah.
And I want to do it like them or better. And then I would see examples of that was really bad leadership. No one likes this person. Let's not do that.
Yeah.
So I think inherently I've just always been a student of the game.
Yeah.
And I think that probably carries over to a lot of other industries as well, not just hospitality. But I think hospitality is unique because the personalities involved in every restaurant are so vast.
Exactly.
Whereas in accounting office, a lot of those folks or teachers or, a lot of these people are kind of similar in their career and their personality.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas we get every walk of life, so it really takes a lot of, just a lot of observation, patience, skill to really to kind of blend and make sure you're approachable. And, so that was one of my biggest things about leadership was, learning that like some of those skills on how to be approachable, how to follow through with people. You've got to really build a trust with your teams to where they feel like they can come to you, or they feel like if they're bringing you information that would be important to them or to the business, that it's not falling on deaf ears and that we have their attention. That we're not on our phone the whole time, that they're speaking to us.
Yeah. That
you're taking the time as important as it may be for us as operators or not. We're taking the time to show them the respect and hear them out. So
yeah. You're very observant, clearly, and so you were observant and self-aware, observant of positive traits, negative traits, and then self-reflective and aware of am I avoiding the things that I didn't like? And I mean that's a skill. I mean, some people don't connect the dots on that. They rail against a practice that they actually do themselves or whatever. So
yeah, it's funny. We talk a lot in our culture about self-awareness.
Yeah.
And not just not only knowing what we're good at and what we're not, and trying to build around that so we can have a successful business, but also how we behave as leaders. Knowing that there's always one of our mentors that we look to as far as operations is Danny Meyer, of course.
Sure.
And, he talks a lot about when you become a leader, how all eyes are on you,
right?
In all ways, and people are waiting to hear how you're going to deliver a message, or and it's funny how you can, as a leader in a restaurant, you get delivered messages that you don't always want to hear because we have to be problem solvers. We have to we get unfortunate news that is going to be challenging, and we really set the tone as leaders in our restaurants on how the energy is and how to behave. So it's even funny when you receive a message like the walk-in cooler went down.
Yeah.
The staff is waiting to see how you're going to react to
Right.
that. And that dictates how they're going to react. If it's, oh, it's the worst day ever, I can't believe this, that's going to trickle down. Or if it's like, it is what it is, man, we're going to get through it. Here's what I think how we should go about this tonight. And you can see how that, it's almost like the wake that a boat leaves behind it, so.
That's interesting. Yeah. Do you leave a clean wake and one that people want to follow, or one filled with
Destruction.
unintentional trash and destruction? Yeah. And choppiness. Yeah, for sure. I mean, most people want to be led, and they subconsciously I mean, there's mirror neurons, and you're going to lead people as a GM or as a executive in a group like this, and the way you do it, it will absolutely infiltrate the rest of the team, no doubt about it. You guys have a great handle on that. Okay, I got to ask you this: where in Aspen? Did you go to Aspen, or where in Denver did you go? Or
no,
where in Colorado?
That
did you
shows
go?
you how stubborn we were. In 2000, at the age of 18, we used the interweb that was just becoming popular. We found the cheapest apartment in Colorado. It ended up being in Colorado Springs.
Okay.
Which is about 2 hours from the closest
It's not close
mountain.
to it.
So we that was a rude awakening for us
Yeah.
as some dumb kids traveling out there. But it was okay because we were 2 hours from some of the best snowboarding and skiing in the country. So, we were able to find jobs in Colorado Springs, and we made that our little home for, the 8 to 10 months that we were there. But that's where we ended up landing, was Colorado Springs.
Do you still snowboard?
I love it. Yeah, I do. I'm old, and my knee's not the best anymore, so I'm a little more cautious when I'm out there. But I mean, I grew up as a ski and then snowboard rat as a kid. I mean, after school, night skiing. I mean, so that was a big part of my childhood coming up, and which is why it was such a great idea for us at the time to go out there and enjoy, on a bigger scale, and so yeah, I'll never. That'll always be a valuable and precious time that I can look back on. It's actually funny. One of my buddies I moved out there with recently shared a photo of the living room in the apartment, and it's just if you've seen the movie Animal House, it's kind of so.
I've been there, man. Well, I mean, I'm a ski bum, and I'm just sitting here thinking, like, you guys need to take Oku out there to.
Oh man, I know,
one of those mountain towns, and then get you a hotel property out there, and
I'd love to. It's funny because everyone always says with the sushi game, they're like, "Oh, you're based in Charleston. You guys must get the freshest fish." And it's funny because all the fish at a high end level that we serve in the Japanese restaurants, they're not just fished off the local pier.
Right,
they're shipped from all over the world,
right,
overnight, FedEx to our restaurant. So we can really be located anywhere in the country and get the best of the best. So you never know, man. Oku on the ski resort may be a thing one day.
Drop in Aspen, something like that. Talk about insulated from varying, possibly negative economic conditions. But Jack's Fish House and Oyster Bar out there, Big Red F Group, great group, and they're in Boulder and Denver, and they got a bunch of Jack's locations, and their freaking oysters are fantastic. Right up there in the front range of the Colorado mountains. But because fast shipping and boom. Okay, so you've had a great rise and a great run through this organization. You told me before we started recording that you learned a lot from Steve. Talk about Steve Palmer.
Steve Palmer, wow. I mean, for me personally, I've known him since the conception of the company. He showed up as a consultant, and I was just a server at the restaurant that needed a little love, and he was there to guide. So that's kind of where we started our relationship. I will say I'm lucky enough to say that over the years of working with him, we've become quite close and formed a great bond and friendship. I look to him as like a big brother, a father figure, and a mentor. He's just he's a man that's taught, I think, myself and a lot of people in our company values. To be a person of your word. If you say something, follow through with that, or else people won't trust you. Your credibility is chipped away. Really basic things, in life that he's just pressed upon and said, hey, this is the stuff that's important. This is the foundation of trust and how to be a good leader. So, he's just a pretty dynamic guy. He's obviously got a lot of experience and skill in the hospitality industry, so a ton to learn and have learned over the years from him there. But also, he's probably one of the more generous people that I know, as far as seeing the best in people, giving second chances. I've seen him. I was the first person. The first house I've ever owned and bought. He created a home buying loan program for the company. Down payments are not easy to come up with. Tens of thousands of dollars, and so they, once the company grew, and he was able to implement certain things like this. He started a program where if you can provide, enough money to get close to a down payment, the company will cover the other half, and you can pay that other half back interest free over a period of time that you can pretty much discuss and with him and work out some sort of a plan that makes sense. And
it's amazing.
Yeah. So, a lot of things like that.
God, that's such a cool thing.
Yeah. Being, for me, I mean, what he's done for me, we have two great partners that help us financially with all these new openings, new properties. So, for me, being the GM of that first original Oku in Charleston, where my home is, showing that I had loyalty and dedication and a work ethic, becoming a partner was life-changing for me. I was looking at things to do in the later parts of my life, and I would never could dream or imagine the life I have now because of him and Mike and Andy, who saw, I think, something in me and saw, my drive, and said, hey, we don't want to lose this guy, and we see value in him, and we think he can get us to another level or another place and continue the expansion and the dream of Oku. So for that, I'm I'll always be more than grateful for Steve to see that and give me the opportunity. But yeah, he's just an overall pretty inspiring guy. Like you said, Ben's friends. I mean, he's done pretty amazing things, and I can only imagine for him the pressure at times being in charge of a company, because like we all know, nothing in this world is perfect.
Right.
So things happen, and there's decisions that have to be made that are not easy, and so to carry that weight and still be so visible and approachable. I mean, that's one thing that a lot of our teams will say is they're surprised at how the founder of this company is so approachable and so visible. A lot of times the CEO, the owner, the founder, you don't see him much, and he's very hands-on. He's, he likes to learn. It's hard now with soon to be 30 some restaurants, but he likes to know people's names, the host, the dishwasher, the expediter, the line cooks. He loves that. He loves being in the restaurants and connecting with people. Also, he's very involved. Thankfully, we've grown to a place where, we're in different cities and we have multiple concepts. So naturally, we've created area directors who can help kind of oversee multiple places and help support and coach the GMs and the chefs.
Yeah.
But he's still so involved that he's texting with general managers about stuff, and it could just be, how's this employee doing? We saw I was there for dinner, and they were doing great. They looks like they've improved. Little things like that just, I think, are what make the Indigo Road special.
I find it really amazing that, and I've read his book, and I mean, he says the restaurant industry saved his life twice. He's been in some bad spots. He relates to, you talked about being the wild child, your parents having to bail you out of some. So he probably saw a lot of himself in you, is my guess. His ability to go from, where he has been at times earlier in his life to where he is now is really amazing. Because, yes, it is one thing to build a successful restaurant group. It is very hard to build a group as fast as you all have grown, and to have now, what is it, like 28 restaurants and 3 hotels? I mean, you're like 31 properties or something like that.
28, and then with the hotel, the hotels now, it's definitely it's a big company.
That to build, see that through the growth, manage that, have just all the things that come along with that rapid growth, and to still be able to do it with such as you said, approachability and calm. I mean, that's the perfect example of that. I mean, the number of metaphorical and literal maybe fires that he probably has to put out all the time. I find that to be a fascinating skill set, to be able to do that and do it with grace and calm and the right kind of leadership, so that everybody does. So his wake is pleasant.
Yeah,
and
that's with the growth. I think one of the main focuses is to make sure it always still feels organic, and
that
it's
right.
We don't feel like too big of a company or like I think and that's interesting, because only a person like him, in my opinion, can keep his eyes and ears and hands on everything still at this level and continue to. He amazes me every day. Sometimes these emails I get, I'm like, how are you still dialed into this?
Right.
Like, wow, okay.
All right, y'all. Time for a little mid-episode break to talk about Kickfin, our mid-episode sponsor and a great business. Thousands of restaurants, bars, and breweries use Kickfin to tip out their employees instantly, no cash required. With Kickfin, tips go directly to your employer's bank of choice the second their shift ends. It's a really simple solution to a really big problem, because if you're still paying out credit card tips in cash, it's costing you. Time-consuming bank runs and cash counting take managers away from work that matters. Cash is hard to track, which leads to accounting headaches, and it creates the perfect opportunity for theft, human error, and compliance issues. Bottom line, there's never been an instant, secure way to pay out tips until Kickfin. It's an easy-to-use software that sends real-time cashless tip payouts straight to your employees' bank accounts 24/7, 365. Kickfin gives managers hours back in their day, makes reporting a breeze, and protects your business from risk. Most importantly, employees love it. Restaurants can have Kickfin up and running overnight. Employees can enroll in seconds. No hardware, no contracts, no setup fees. Visit kickfin.com for a personalized demo and see how restaurants across the country are digitizing tips with Kickfin. That's what they like me to read. I will tell you this. I know the folks at Kickfin. Check out the episode with Brian Hassan, the co-CEO of Kickfin, was on here on the podcast. Great people, love what they do. They treat their customers well. We have mutual customers that love the product and love the way they the relationship they have with Kickfin. So check it out, link in the show notes, and let's check out the rest of this episode.
I want to ask you something, going back to something you talked about early on, which is your childhood and going out with your family and eating in restaurants. I think that just, on average, it was a more affordable venture for a family of 4 or 5. I've got a family of 5 now. The last few years have put a lot of pressure on the consumer. They put a lot of pressure on y'all, and I mean the consumer's now starting to see it, rising. I mean, your costs have gone up for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about how y'all look 30,000 foot at what's going on and in the consumer's mind now. And you are still in some great markets that have probably maybe held up better than some others over the last couple of years. But I mean, still, it is not cheap to take a family out and to do that on a regular basis. I mean, we go a little bit less now. Like I'm like cooking a little bit more now,
sure,
just because you get done, you're like, wow, that's how much it just costs to.
All you've got to do is go to the grocery store, and you
Absolutely.
You see it, you feel it, you're like, wow,
Yeah. So how do we keep providing that type of experience, for and or do we? I mean, do we have them not coming as often so that when they come, they spend a lot more, I'm so fascinated with how you, as a restaurant owner and operator, try to approach that dynamic, because it's definitely changed. And I think there's where we are today, but like over the next few years, like maybe it turns, maybe prices go back down. I don't know.
Well, one thing which I'm thankful for, and we saw this over the quarantine pandemic time frame, is that sushi has now been built into most people's weekly and or probably at least monthly repertoire.
Yeah.
You know, because we saw that during COVID when, you know, when some of our restaurants were only doing to go, people were like over the moon that we'd gotten back open and they could get their sushi. You know, I mean, so I think in some instances we have a slight advantage in our industry being this type of cuisine for Oku.
Yeah.
You know, we do see a lot of regulars in all of our restaurants in all the different regions, you know, weekly diners. That being said, sushi's always been kind of known to be at a higher level pretty expensive.
Yeah.
So, you know, our main focus is not sacrificing quality or price, but to ensure the experience, you know, because at the end of the day, like you said, you cook more, people, you know, it's cheaper to cook. It's cheaper to get just takeout. But I do feel like there is something special about the dining out experience.
Yes.
Which people, you know, they want to feel taken care of. They want, you know, and it's that overall, I guess kind of feeling that you get when you go out. And, you know, I'm thankful that we have built and designed great spaces to where people can actually feel a little bit stepped away from their day-to-day when they're in there, you know, and there's little things, you know, like the lighting and the music that's just so important to me personally. But even just, you know, the interaction that our teams are trained to kind of provide for the guests, you know, whether it be that moment where it's like, hey, these folks are here and, you know, it's all about them together.
Yeah.
You know, so let's just support. Let's make sure we're available but not intrusive.
Yeah.
Let's make sure that if it is somebody who's yearning for more social interaction with the people in the restaurant working, that we're giving that to them, that we're talking to them, we're calling them by their first name.
Right.
We're there for everything that they need. So for me, the biggest focus is let's make sure when these guests are here that they're getting, you know, some sort of a, you know, in some ways it is life changing. You know, we do certain things in some experiences for guests that they say, wow, this was the highlight of my month, my year.
Yeah.
So, you know, my biggest thing is making sure that whoever comes in, it's a special moment, you know.
I'm going to brag on your team here at the host stand. Because when I was sitting out there waiting, I had my podcast equipment on one of those tables, and they were setting up the tables. I'm like, hey, y'all, let me move this because I know you are. They're like, no. You're fine. You're good. And I'm like, okay, you sure? Yeah. Like, they're like, what's going on? I was like, well, I'm waiting for Kimball. And they're like, you're good. You need anything? I'm like, no, I'm fine. And then I'm kind of hanging, like checking some texts. And one of the young ladies was talking about like the challenges of dating. Like she's a, you know, single mom and she's just funny. And I wasn't snooping, but I just overheard. I was like, you're hilarious. And they were laughing and they kind of pulled me into the conversation and were just so nice and welcoming and present. And I mean, that could have gone either way. They could have been like, who's this freaking dude creeping on, you know, like, I mean,
Sure.
But they really made me feel welcome. And I think that's what you would want to hear. And I just want you to know that like, that was really cool for me. Like,
that's awesome. That's a
and
nice organic moment.
It's a great organic moment. And I'm the guy that like my kids and my wife sometimes are like, dude, just because I'm real outgoing and I talk to anybody and they're like, people think you're like, you know, trying to sell them something. Like, I don't care. Like, that's how I am. I'm you know, and, but I know that can like sometimes they can be like, who's this weirdo?
Yeah,
They were so great at it. And I mean, it was just, that is, this long circuitous story. It comes back to what y'all do so well, what we were talking about before this. Why I wanted to talk to Chris for this podcast, who's your director of culture, is that you have a great culture here, which means, and they've worked at, I talked to them, they've worked at multiple places around here. They've been in the industry a while, one 8 years, one 10 years. Great culture and great leadership attracts great people, and great people want to be a part of great cultures. Players get it, and they want to be somewhere where they know there's going to be other people like them, and they want to create that experience and they want it to be memorable. And when you have this kind of phenomenal, well curated culture that is just instilled into your team, then you're going to bring in people. And for them, that was just a natural thing.
Yeah.
Like you said, it was very organic, but it was cool.
That makes me happy and proud to hear that, because it is a newer team.
Yeah.
We've only been open about 3 weeks. We had about 2 weeks of training, but when I was coming up, there were a lot of industry lifers and veterans.
Yeah.
We see a lot less of
Right.
that now.
Yeah.
So the focus now is really to find people with a genuine heart for hospitality and somebody who genuinely cares about other people.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, and you're willing to put in the little work and some curious intelligence to learn about what restaurants are about, then we'd rather have you than someone who's worked here, there, and everywhere and knows exactly what to do.
Right.
We'd rather find the right person and train them on what we do, in the restaurant technically, and going to what you said, that's something that, we try and really pride ourselves on, is not only like the interaction that you had, but even purveyors that come in, delivery guys, drivers.
Yeah. Right.
I've been in the industry for my whole life essentially, and I've seen where, our purveyors are so important, right? But they get kind of looked over in as far as, what we call the circle of enlightened hospitality, right? There's a circle and it's all rhythm and everything's connected. The purveyors are a big part. I mean, without them, we have no wine on our shelves, no food in the walk-in cooler to serve. And so when those people show up, with our product that we need to sell, we're very gracious with them.
Yeah.
I've noticed and I've observed other places that, don't really, interact with them or, maybe ignore them. Almost act like it's a hassle that they showed up with the goods that we need to do our business.
Right.
So we're quick to, those are our partners essentially. And I could only imagine what it's like driving around in South Carolina, 100-degree heat all day in a semi, and then having to unload onto a dolly and get into a restaurant and sweating. And so, we're quick to say, hey, how are you? Has somebody helped you? Can we get you something to drink, which like a Coke or a water? There's times where sometimes they show up at the right time and they sit down for family meal with us because we have food up for the staff. And
that's
so,
awesome.
and because that's the thing is, we want to do this business differently. There's a lot of great operators out there that we've studied and that are doing great things, but we've always said, man, we want to do it our way, special way, and do it a little differently than it has been in the past.
Yeah.
And so, there's little things like that, like for a gentleman who wandered into the restaurant before we're open, a lot of times we're met with, we're not open till 5.
Yeah.
Which is standard, that's true. But
Yeah.
how about, hey, how are you? Is there something
Yeah.
I can, are you looking for, and so I feel
What
like
can I do for you?
I'm proud that you had that moment just
Yeah.
now.
You should be.
So that's rewarding to hear.
Yeah. Well, good. You should be, because I wanted to make sure to tell you that because I thought it was really cool.
Appreciate that.
In fact, they were. I was telling them, we're doing a podcast, and this podcast is a 6th ranked hospitality podcast in the world right now, and we're real proud of that. We're about to hit 500 episodes, and so I was telling them that, and they're like, I want to be in a podcast. Like, I've always wanted to be in a podcast. I was like, y'all would be perfect for a podcast. Like, I'll talk to anybody in hospitality, from a 14-year-old buster who's got starry eyes and wants to make this a career one day, to a career server, to you name it. Because I think that the industry that you live in is we're so proud to serve it. It's full of people. It's the most diverse industry, period.
Yeah, which is why I love it.
To your point, and this is what I love so much, and I really hope that people start to, over the next decade, I hope people really start to understand how meaningful this career can be, not just as a place to get your first job, but as a place to build an amazing life like you have. And I mean, dude, I got one kid in college, I got 2 more on the way, and I'm sitting there scratching my head a lot of times going, yeah, but unless they do this, or that, like their degree's kind of like not really going to be worth all that money. And, meanwhile, like you could be working for this amazing business at 19, like building a career that could turn into something incredibly rewarding in so many ways, where you every day get to interact with people that are, coming in and celebrating a important moment in their life, or a win or a loss or something, where you're able to make them feel better. And it's like, I know y'all Steve talks about this. I think Chris and I talked about this quote, the Maya Angelou quote. You know, people don't remember what you said, but they remember how you made them feel. And where do you go? And back to your point, where do you go when you want to just kind of feel a little bit better? You go to a restaurant, and literally recently, I'm always like, I'll just cook something, guys. And it's like 3 or 4 weeks ago, my daughter's like, can we just go out and eat tonight? I was like, okay, fine. So we go out and eat, and we're sitting there, and she goes, you know, Dad, you know, sometimes it's just nice to just go out and be taken care of. I was like, dude, you are so freaking right. Like, what a great experience. And we connected, and it was just, that's where you connect, because people are not, you know, like at home, I'm going to go eat in front of the TV or on my, you know, and we're all together
Sure.
and put our phones down, and amazing experience.
Great restaurants kind of naturally act and become almost like a community center.
Yes,
you know,
yes.
That's right. It's a meeting place, and you know, I said earlier, what we do can be life changing, and you know, as some people may question, or it may sound, I guess you could even say cheesy, but the amount of engagements, proposals, divorce parties,
right?
I mean, I've seen it all, and I mean, people for years remember things. And they remember where they were, and they didn't remember what you said or what you did, but they remember how they felt in that moment. And so for us to, I mean, to me, it is being part of something life-changing a lot of times. So I'm honored with that, and you know, to be part of that, and for people, and you know, it's funny what you're saying about your family. You know, I had recently a teacher come into Oku Greenville. I think it was like last week, and she showed up probably the worst time to apply for a job, and she came in at like 6 p.m. We were super busy, and I said, you know, hey, maybe if you could come back in the afternoon. And I said, well, I got you. I said, so where do you work somewhere now? And she said, well, I'm a teacher, but I've always been interested in restaurants. So here I am looking at this woman. She's probably in her late 30s, has a great career in education, and you know, I know what teacher salaries are.
Yeah.
I also know what my servers who are skilled are making.
Right.
I may stick with the restaurant business if I had a choice. For her, it was a security thing. Because I said, you know, unfortunately, you can't get here till 4 or 5. Our servers, they have to be in a little earlier. They come in the afternoon. There's a lot of setup.
Yeah.
And so she was kind of scratching her head, a little bit disappointed about, like, maybe this won't work out. And I said, hey, there's other opportunities to come in aside from your full-time position in education, and be a support person part-time. You know, you could be a host, obviously a mature, well-spoken, put-together person. I said, you know, you could easily excel at some of these support roles that are not server or bartender. And I started to explain to her, because I think she was interested, didn't know much about the business, but then, and I've had this thought over the last 5 years, you know, there's always been this stigma of, well, I'm just doing this until my real job, my big girl, my big boy job, okay? And I always said, I'm processing payroll quite often. This is a very real job.
Absolutely.
The money you're making is very real. And and it's funny, because so when this teacher was in, I said to her, you know, I'm going to have to pitch the business to you. And I will say, I know you've got a great career. It probably feels very secure. And jumping into a server role at your age, at your point in your life, probably feels maybe like it's a gamble. But I said, you know, if you're going back to what I said about the right people, it's waiting tables. It's being hospitable. It's very simple technical things, you know, ringing in the right order, writing it down properly. I mean, it's very. But I said, our industry's changed so much, and our company, I feel like, has taken it very seriously as far as trying to make it a more humane, sustainable career. We offer benefits. We have paid time off. And I told her, it was funny, I kind of stumped her a little. I said, I got to tell you, there's no other industry out there where you can make, you know, I mean, there's servers in our I'll just say our company, because we got a lot of different restaurants. There's servers that are making anywhere from 60, 65 to 100K a year.
Yeah.
And I said, there's very few industries where you can do that and have a flexible schedule, where you can say 2 weeks prior, hey, I've got this great opportunity to go over to out to California for a week. Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
All right. And then you get back, you're a little short on cash. Well, you know what? I'm only scheduled 5 days. I'm going to pick up a 6 and make up another, you know, a few hundred. I mean, I'm like, you know, as long as you're okay with an active position and being on your feet, for me, it's like a win. I mean, if I wasn't in the role I'm in now, I always said, when I retire, I'm just going to go back to waiting tables.
Yeah.
Because I enjoy it. I love the human interaction, and and the money's there. So it very much is a real career.
Yeah.
Even at that level of just being, a server, a bartender, there's great opportunity there. So I think we'll see if she comes back to explore a different opportunity.
I hope so. Maybe
Yeah.
I bet she's been thinking about that quite a bit.
I bet so.
And in a group like yours, sky's the limit. I mean, do well there,
Well, that's the
soak
thing.
up the culture, and then you become a assistant manager. And I mean, like, you guys are opening. Look, I mean, it's just there's so much room for growth in a group like Indigo, right?
Mm-hmm. And running restaurants is a tough job.
Mm-hmm.
To be a leader, like I said, for a diverse group of personalities. But there's something so fulfilling for me. And so when we're looking for leaders in our company, general managers, executive chefs, beverage managers, assistant managers, sous chefs, we're looking for a certain type of person, that's got patience, but that's got, motivation, and, it's different in the different positions within a restaurant. But, if you are somebody who is a hard worker in our company, I've seen the growth happen. I mean, I'm a product of probably one of the best stories of growth in our company. But I've seen it with different people who started as, an expediter at a restaurant and then became a server. And then all of a sudden, we saw something special. They had the work ethic. They had the curious intelligence to learn more and to grow. And next thing you know, they're general manager a year later. Next thing you know, they become an area director.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen the path in our company. So, it's satisfying for me, growing up as a young kid at the age of 14 and 15 and just working in restaurants and knowing how those restaurants operated and the cultures, which were fun at the time. I think that's probably why I grew up so fast as a young person,
right,
and fell in
yeah.
love with the business. But to
Yeah.
see how it's matured over time, and just to see the way businesses are run, and it became such a cool, hip thing. Restaurants have always been cool, but Food Network and all these things have blown up over the years that have just really exposed our industry in such a good way. And, I think hopefully we will see more career restaurant people here in the very near future.
I want to ask you, you touched on, Ben's friends. Just share a little bit about, I love that topic, and I think it's such an important one for this industry. So just a little high level summary of what Ben's friends is for those that don't know about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we opened a restaurant in Florence, South Carolina, and Steve at the time had contacted people to come help. We always pulled people from other restaurants to help with these openings because it's a heavy lift, and we want everyone to feel supported. So, he pulled an old friend of his named Ben Murray. He was a culinary chef. He pulled him in to help, and the interesting thing was Ben had been struggling with addiction, and he was struggling in that time, but no one knew it. Surprisingly enough, he was surrounded at the time by like 3 or 4 sober chefs from other parts of the company that had come in, and if we had only known he was struggling, we could have helped him. And I feel like he at the time didn't know how to ask for help or speak up about it.
Right.
So unfortunately, he ended up taking his life while helping us with that project. And Steve was the first one to be there to kind of handle some of the personal stuff with his family and all of those kind of details that happen after a horrific situation like that. So it really woke, and this was coming off the heels of Anthony Bourdain committing suicide and dealing with depression and mental health and addiction. Yeah. So him and one of his old buddies, Mickey Bax from Charleston, he was probably the best known restaurateur in Charleston. He was the maitre d' at the Charleston Grill in the Charleston Place Hotel. They were like, we really need to do something about this. Why is it that we're losing people in our industry? And something that's been said is, industry people spend so much time taking care of others. Yep. They don't take care of themselves. Yep. And sometimes it's hard for, and Steve, he's been sober a long time, but he had his own challenges when he got sober went to rehab, and then re-entered the restaurant industry. You know, it was challenging. You know, I mean, a lot of it used to be based around going out and getting plastered.
Work hard,
every
play
night.
hard. Yeah, right.
That's changed a lot now, and I see that with our teams. You know, it's not always this big push to go get banged up after the shift. It's, you know, so I do see a shift there. But you know what they've created with Ben's Friends is, you know, a platform, online, Zoom, multiple meetings a day, in-person meetings in different cities. I think they're in, I want to say like 30 some states, different cities in different states. And they, you know, it's basically almost like a support group similar to like AA it's intended for restaurant people.
Yeah.
You know, so that you can be in this business, because the stigma has been so strong that drugs and alcohol just went with this business. But really it's less of that now, at least for groups like us who are pushing for positive lifestyles, you know, and self-care and self-help. And so I think them creating that support group for people, and you know, there's a lot of, I can't speak on it as much as Mickey and Steve, but they've have some really strong success stories of life-changing things for people who you know, have been in the industry, were struggling, were worried about being in the industry, and then finding the support and know that there's a lot of people out there that are in the same boat and that are serving alcohol and around it, but can still thrive in the business without the pressure of, you know, using drugs and alcohol.
So if you're listening and you know somebody or you or whatever, you know, if any issues with substance abuse and you don't know where to turn, Ben's Friends is fantastic. You can find them online. There's chapters all over the place. Just always like to make sure when we have the opportunity to bring that up. So thank you. Last thing I want to ask you is, do you know the Giving Kitchen?
The Giving Kitchen, yeah.
Yeah. We just posted an episode this morning. I was down there a couple weeks ago in Atlanta with Jen Heidinger Kendrick and told their story. And I just...
In the Bluffs. The the location of the...
Well, they're out of their office is in Atlanta,
right?
But they have raised over $9 million in 10 years and helped over 13,000 food service workers in crisis. And y'all do a lot of this within your group, but I know Steve. You know.
I'm sorry. There's another group that we're heavily involved with called the City of Refuge.
City of Refuge.
But,
okay.
Sorry, I got confused for a second.
Yeah, so they help. Anyway, I had the shirt on, so I thought I'd ask. But they help food service workers in crisis. Like a family member died, I can't work for a while, but now I'm going to get evicted, or, you know, can't pay my gas bill or whatever. I got injured, and it's a phenomenal organization. But there's so many good people in this industry, or in the, you know, it's helping people in this industry, whether it's Ben's Friends or Giving Kitchen, or, I mean, what Steve did, that whole thing with a loan for people buying. I mean, it's just incredible, the amount of altruism and care and love that so many people in this industry provide to their customers and to their team. And y'all are a great example of that. And yes, it is incredibly important to make sure that while you're doing that, you're also, and this is where I think the industry, leaders in the industry are starting, like Steve, are starting to lead by example of this. But you got to take care of yourself. You have to. Otherwise, you know, you have a story like Ben. And that there was too much of that for too long in this industry, and I think it's moving in a really positive direction in so many ways. So
yeah, I mean, powerful stuff, you know. So it's honored to be part of something, you know, like that, and with things like Ben's Friends, and just
Well, honored to have you on here. You guys are trying to get open here soon, I think, so we'll wrap this up. But I cannot thank you enough. I thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. Learned a lot. I mean, this podcast is designed to educate and inspire, and we got both from you. So thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you. It was an honor to be here and chat with you, and I appreciate every moment of it.
All right, man. Good work. Thank you.
Appreciate you.
That's a wrap, y'all.
Alrighty.
Hey, y'all, before you sign out on this episode, a couple of quick things. Number one, if you listen to us on iTunes, if you could give us a star rating and a comment, it would help so much. Same thing if you're on Spotify, follow us, or any platform that you're on, if you would just do whatever their rating or follow options are. What that does is it tells the algorithms that this content is good and meaningful and valuable, and it'll it'll tell them to put it in front of more people. So thank you for doing that. If you take the second to do that, that'd be so awesome. And also, if your restaurant is either using Excel or you're using some software that's expensive and has a lot of bells and whistles you don't need, or maybe doesn't have great customer service, we'd love to take care of you at ScheduleFly. Simple, easy restaurant employee scheduling software, legendary customer service, 30-day free trial, schedulefly.com. My cell phone number's on the trial sign-up page. Thank you for listening. See ya.